In a world where magic and technology collide, Emma, a human thrust into an alien academy, must navigate a realm filled with danger, prejudice, and secrets. With a malfunctioning suit that is her only lifeline in a mana-charged world, she uncovers a conspiracy that could destroy everything she holds dear. As tensions rise, alliances shift, and a deadly bomb ticks down, Emma must decide whether to trust her newfound peers or risk everything to expose the truth before it's too late. The countdown has begun, and the fate of both worlds hangs in the balance. The protagonist faces a significant challenge in setting up their tent, which is far from a simple task. Unlike the others, who have the luxury of choosing between two plush, magically enhanced mattresses for a comfortable night's sleep, the protagonists must rely on their own efforts. They are left with two options: either sleep in their cumbersome power armor or go through the arduous process of setting up a deployable shelter. The tent itself is not self-assembling, unlike other systems used in the past, and requires manual assembly, something the protagonist must do alone. While this could be an easier task with additional hands, the protagonist is forced to use their own limited strength, relying heavily on their exoskeleton to assist with the physical strain. The process is a mix of order and chaos as they carefully unfold the various components of the tent and set up the necessary systems. Even with the extra help from the power armor's manipulator claw, which aids in tasks that would otherwise be too difficult, the protagonist's frustration grows as the process stretches on for hours, leaving them exhausted. Meanwhile, Thea enjoys her evening routine of luxury and comfort, highlighting the contrast between their experiences. As the protagonist continues the long and exhausting process of setting up their tent, Thea indulges in her lengthy beauty rituals, benefiting from the comforts of the luxurious living arrangements provided by the Academy. While Thea enjoys the warmth of an ensuite bathroom and the unlimited supplies of amenities for her feathers, the protagonist is stuck in the midst of an ordered chaos, trying to assemble their shelter with nothing but their own hands and the assistance of their exoskeleton. The task is both physically demanding and mentally draining, forcing them to rely on the advanced technology of their suit to compensate for their fatigue. The tent itself is a complex, non-self-assembling structure, which requires multiple kits and careful calibration, adding to the protagonist's stress. Despite the chaos, Thea remains understanding and attempts to ignore the growing mess in the room, which has now taken over the floor. As the protagonist works tirelessly, they can't help but feel a sense of isolation, contrasting their experience with the ease and luxury Thea enjoys. After hours of struggling with the tent setup, the protagonist finally completes the process of draining the dangerous mana from the air inside the shelter. However, the process takes much longer than expected, nearly twice the time outlined in the operations manual due to equipment malfunctions and unexpected power fluctuations. The protagonist spends these agonizing hours confined in the small, airlock section of the tent, unable to sit or rest comfortably, and is left staring into the space slowly being purged of mana. Exhausted, the protagonist suffers through several microsleeps, questioning their choices and the strange reality they found themselves in. Once the mana is fully extracted, the tent is left starkly empty and sterile, its dull white interior resembling a biohazard containment shelter rather than a personal space. With no energy left to unpack the remaining equipment, the protagonist feels an overwhelming sense of frustration, wanting to escape the isolation and discomfort. In a moment of relief, they finally remove their power armor, escaping its confines and feeling the world around them once again, even if it is still far from the comfort they long for. However, their brief respite ends quickly as they pass out from sheer exhaustion, sprawled on the cold floor. The next morning, the protagonist wakes up on the cold floor of the tent, disoriented and exhausted from the sleepless night. Despite the relief of finally being free from the restrictive power armor, they still find themselves in an uncomfortable position, struggling to remember where they are and what's going on. After a moment of grogginess, they attempt to get up, only to bang their head against the metal armor. This small, painful incident prompts them to sit down and reorient themselves, still groggy and not quite fully aware of their surroundings. Once they manage to gather their bearings, they begin running diagnostics on the armor, ensuring everything is functioning properly before they can continue their day. The process is more difficult without assistance, but the suit is designed for solo entry, so after some effort, they manage to get back inside. Once the armor is reassembled and the diagnostics completed, they exit the tent, finally stepping back into the world outside, which now feels different due to the morning light. The once dreary surroundings now look more inviting, with intricate stonework and gleaming floors. Despite still being burdened by the constant need for the suit, the protagonist is somewhat relieved by the change of scenery and ready to move forward with their day. As the protagonist prepares to face the day, they are greeted by Thea, who is already dressed and ready to go. The princess, appearing immaculate as ever, smiles warmly, but there's a hint of concern in her eyes as she glances between the protagonist and the messy state of the tent and its equipment. After the protagonist apologizes for the noise the night before, Thea reassures them with a simple gesture, letting them know it's fine. She had already taken care of the noise issue by using a spell to dampen the sound, ensuring that the entire tower wouldn't be disturbed by the constant hum of the mana extraction equipment. The protagonist is grateful for her thoughtfulness and begins to appreciate more of the kindness she's shown. Despite the tension and the heavy burdens they're carrying, this moment of mutual understanding seems to ease the protagonist's mind a little. The conversation shifts to the bigger issues ahead, and they head out to meet the rest of the group, ready to tackle the day's challenges together, knowing that Thea has their back and that their growing camaraderie is an important part of surviving in this new world. The protagonist and Thea are soon joined by the rest of the group, Thalman and Eleanor, who are waiting to discuss their plans for the day. Thalman, attempting to mediate, nudges Eleanor to behave more civilly as the conversation turns to the previous night's noise. Eleanor, unable to hold back his curiosity and anxiety, demands answers from the protagonist, asking if the noise was due to some mystical taint consuming them. His frantic questioning takes a bizarre turn as he imagines dramatic and exaggerated scenarios, which causes a stir among the group. The protagonist, trying to defuse the situation, calmly addresses Eleanor's wild speculations, denying any of the exaggerated claims and reassuring everyone that no harm had come to them. However, Eleanor's insistence on pressing the issue leads to a brief moment of physical intervention from the protagonist, who lifts the lizard-like creature off the ground and takes him to the tent to show the source of the noise. After explaining that the noise was caused by their life-supporting tent and armor setup, the group finally begins to understand the complexities of the protagonist's situation. Despite Eleanor's confusion, Thalman shows some progress in grasping the reasoning, though Eleanor is still in disbelief. This interaction sets the stage for a deeper understanding among the group, even as they continue to work through their differences and learn more about one another. After the tense exchange with Eleanor, the protagonist takes a moment to gather the group and address the looming issue of the mysterious bomb that had been planted in the academy. This is a turning point where the protagonist decides to be transparent with the group about the danger they are all facing. The protagonist brings out the footage from the previous night, showing the bomb and explaining its functionality. The device, designed to explode without using mana, is capable of detonating if tampered with or if it reaches its preset activation time. The danger it poses is clear, especially since it can't be neutralized by the professors or anyone with knowledge of magic, as it doesn't rely on mana to function. Thalman, though supportive of the protagonist, points out that the memory shards they possess might not stand up to scrutiny, as they lack the usual mana signatures that would make them believable. Despite this, Thalman agrees to support the protagonist, showing faith in their honesty and the authenticity of their account. Eleanor, still skeptical and clearly rattled by the technology he's witnessing, struggles to accept the reality of the situation, but ultimately joins the group in preparing to confront the professors about the bomb. The group is now united in their resolve, despite their different backgrounds and the challenges that lay ahead. Foreign and Strangs, the group begins their preparations to confront the professors. A sense of unity forms between them, despite their earlier differences. The protagonist and Thea, after a series of intense conversations, have managed to bridge the gap of understanding, with Thea offering emotional support for the protagonist's unique challenges. Thalman, the mercenary prince, has demonstrated a level of respect and trust, although he remains skeptical about the situation, acknowledging the difficulties in persuading others. Eleanor, the Venerian, still struggles with the concept of human technology and the protagonist's use of it, but his reluctance eventually gives way to grudging acceptance. With the group now cohesively aligned, they head towards their next destination, the Grand Dining Hall. The protagonist reflects on the transformative experience they've had with their peers, realizing that, despite the tensions and complexities of their situation, they are no longer just individuals thrown together by circumstance. They are a team ready to face the daunting challenges ahead, including the bomb and the larger mystery threatening their safety. As the sun rises and illuminates the grand hallways of the academy, the group steps into the unknown, aware that their actions will shape not just their futures, but the fate of their world. As the group walks toward the grand dining hall, the transformation of the academy becomes more apparent. The morning light pours into the hallways, making the previously dull and dreary stone walls come alive with intricate craftsmanship and meticulous detailing. The once lifeless, gray atmosphere is now filled with vibrant hues that seem to breathe life into the building. The floor, which had an almost eerie, polished shine the night before, now reflects the sunlight in a way that amplifies its beauty, with lightning-like patterns appearing as people walk across it. However, for the protagonist, the shift from night to day is a stark reminder of their unfamiliarity with the world they now inhabit. The heavy armor they wear catches the attention of others, accentuating their already noticeable presence in the hall. The protagonist's reliance on the suit and the strange lack of footstep effect further isolates them, even though it's not their intention. As they move forward with the group, there is an undeniable sense of purpose and anticipation, the calm before the storm. The walk towards the grand dining hall marks not just a physical journey, but an emotional one too, as the protagonist for the first time feels the weight of their circumstances, the bomb, the professors, the academy, and the looming uncertainty, all pressing down on them. It's a moment of reflection as they prepare for what comes next, knowing that they have allies now, even if the world around them is still. As the group enters the grand dining hall, the stark contrast between the serene atmosphere outside and the tense purpose of the gathering inside becomes evident. The hall is vast, yet the air is thick with the weight of unspoken questions, particularly surrounding the bomb and its implications. The protagonist, still adjusting to the new reality, feels a subtle shift in the dynamics within the group. Thalman and Eleanor, despite their differences, seem more aligned in purpose, united by the realization of the gravity of their situation. Eleanor, who had previously been a source of irritation, now appears less antagonistic, though still cautious. And Thalman, the more level-headed of the two, is focused and pragmatic. The protagonist's need for answers has now evolved into a need for action. The tension is palpable as the group prepares to confront the professors about the bomb and the hidden dangers within the academy. Each person carries the weight of their own doubts and convictions, but there is a shared understanding that something must be done. The protagonist, guided by a sense of duty, prepares to take the next steps, even as they remain uncertain of what they will encounter. In the midst of this uncertainty, they find themselves standing at the threshold of something far greater than any individual concern: the fate of the academy, their peers, and perhaps even humanity itself. The dining hall becomes a symbolic space where allegiances are tested, and the true scale of the challenges ahead begins to take shape.